The day came. You finally adopted your dog, and at last you can begin building the life that you dreamed of together. Yet what's that well-meaning sound? You should never allow your dog on the furniture. Your dog should always walk at heel. An acceptable activity with a dog is to progress through the park in a linear fashion, punctuated only by a ball game. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And then the self-doubt kicks in. What if they're right? What if you are wrong? What if you're messing up your dog? So you feel paralysed, overwhelmed and judged. You just wanted to happily skip through the meadow together like Laura Ingalls Wilder and Lassie. But now you find yourself stuck in place, immobile, like Shaggy and Scooby on a slippery floor. Am I failing my dog? Am I a bad dog parent? Where do I go from here? Don't panic. I've been there, I've had the existential crisis, and I've bought the t-shirt so that you don't have to. There's so many people who'll happily tell you that there's only one way to raise a dog. But I want you to consider these 4 points. Number 1, are all dogs the same? Number 2, are all humans the same? Number 3, are all dog-human dynamics uniform from house to house and from family to family? And number 4, does scientific knowledge and understanding of dogs and their behaviour remain static and unchanged for all eternity? Spoiler alert, the answer is no to all of those. Now, does this mean that there aren't any constants whatsoever? Well, no, that's not the case either. But it boils down to these main considerations. Ask yourselves the following. Am I keeping others safe? Am I keeping my dog safe? Is my dog comfortable in this situation? Is this choice reducing stress long term? Does this situation fit this specific dog, not an imaginary ideal dog? The truth is that life for you and your dog is probably going to look completely different to my life with Colby, because we're different people and different dogs with different relationships. Going a different way to someone else is not necessarily wrong, and making different choices to someone else is not necessarily a judgment on the way they do things. It's just that you're comparing apples to oranges. Your situations are going to be different. When it comes to which rules and guidelines make sense for your specific situation, only you can say for sure what works for you. So I'll give you an example. According to tradition, you should always walk your dog on your left, because that leaves your right hand free to do anything else that you need to do. So it's become the convention, the normal way of doing things, and that's been adopted into competitive obedience. However, just because it's tradition doesn't necessarily mean it's the right choice. I'm left-handed, so the left's my dominant hand. Does it make sense to have my dog on the right? Although there are rules which have been established for a reason, and I'm not saying never take advice, don't listen to anybody, but you need to evaluate those rules objectively for your situation, which sounds obvious, but is much harder to implement when you're being bombarded with advice. Another example would be people say you should never, ever let your dog on the couch. Usually the basis for this rule is the idea that the dog must be relegated to the floor so that it understands its position within the pack hierarchy and doesn't try to usurp you as pack leader, that the dog must respect you. I've spoken before about how pack hierarchy theory has been thoroughly debunked, including by one of the main original proponents of the theory, so I wouldn't take that into consideration. If banning sofa snuggles would make you actively sad, then there's absolutely no reason not to share the sofa with your pup. If, on the other hand, you would likely be crushed by your 80-kilogram St. Bernard and you're not okay with that, then maybe think again. You have to take into account what works in your situation. Shoulds be damned. So your first course of action in deciding how to proceed with life with your dog is decide on 1 or 2 things that you actually need your dog to do, not what people say your dog should be able to do, not the accepted wisdom, but what do you actually need your dog to do? What would make your specific life situation easier for you and your dog? Once you've decided on the 1 or 2 things that you need to focus on, a maximum of 2, I want you to focus on them solely. Just forget the rest for now. 2 good areas of focus would be recall and safe lead walking, because these are both safety issues. But you know what your needs and challenges are. I don't. If there's one thing I've learned from working with dogs and training my own dogs, it's that it's really easy to become overwhelmed with the sheer amount of training if you try and tackle too many things at once. And that's why I say focus on just 1 or 2 issues. Because remember, it's not just a case of teaching your dog those skills, but there's going to be a certain amount of training upkeep required. If you've got dozens of skills that you've taught your dog, and not all of them are necessary, you're making life much harder for yourself and for your dog. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, maximum 2 things. Have you decided? Write it down. That's your homework. That's your focus. We've already established that there isn't only one way to raise a happy, healthy dog. But it's so easy to second guess yourself and to feel judged. I've got a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt here. She said, "You wouldn't worry so much about what others thought of you if you realised how seldom they do." It's humbling, but it's also true. I used to feel so self-conscious when I let Colby choose his own walking routes, because we would end up going by some very strange meandering routes. He might choose to cross the road 12 times. He might choose to sit on a street corner and watch people get in and out of their cars. Sometimes we might leave a location or an event abruptly to avoid stressors. And I used to feel really self-conscious about that. But the truth is, there's no need to feel embarrassed. Most people won't even notice your existence, let alone your behaviour. And even if they do, they'll forget about it literally 5 seconds later. Nobody's noticing or judging your behaviour. My dog's well-being is a far higher priority to me than the opinion of a stranger or a casual acquaintance. So I want you to do a little experiment. I want you to commit to doing something slightly embarrassing. You get to choose. I'm not going to dictate. Or I want you to walk your dog in a way that doesn't necessarily comply with an Instagram reel of what dog ownership should look like. Maybe take him for a walk in a car park instead of taking him for a walk in a park, and see if the world ends. I'm 99.9% sure that that's not going to happen. Practice doing little strange things with your dog, and you'll be able to build up a much thicker skin, getting used to doing what your dog needs as opposed to battling your own self-consciousness. People's opinions matter to us much more than we would probably like. But if you're going to let the opinions of others affect you, why is it so hard to value your own opinion? Are you fundamentally different to the next person? We've got the same reasoning skills. So why would you trust others when you wouldn't trust yourself? Now, I'm not saying you should never listen to advice. Obviously, you want to listen to what other people say and discern whether that's suitable for you. But you can't just take it on face value with no consideration of your own experiences. You know yourself better than anyone. You know your dog better than anyone. You know your situation better than anyone. So use that as a frame of reference when listening to advice from others. It's really important that you trust your observations, that you trust your experience, and that you advocate for your dog, even when it's really awkward. And I know that this is so much easier said than done. I have felt the same way. There have been situations where I knew that Colby wasn't comfortable with being touched or fussed by a stranger, but I didn't advocate for him because I was too embarrassed, and I didn't want to appear rude, or I didn't want them to think that he wasn't a nice dog. But we really owe it to our dogs to be brave. According to an article on the American Kennel Club website, great dog ownership means understanding your dog, not pleasing everyone else. Your dog's comfort and safety come before others' expectations. That's what true advocacy is. numerous experts and dog welfare organisations emphasise that dogs pushed past what they can tolerate enter a stress state where they cannot think or make good choices. This makes advocacy essential for well-being and often means removing your dog from overwhelming situations. When you advocate for your dog, you are also educating the people around you. Research from Dogs Trust noted that public ability to interpret dog behaviour and respond appropriately influences dog-human interactions and risk of conflict. That makes informed advocacy more than just protecting one dog. It contributes to broader safety. So your homework for this point is at home and there's nobody around. I want you to actually practice nice ways of advocating for your dog. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Just a no thank you or my dog needs space is plenty. But the more you rehearse that on your own, the easier it will be to say in the real world when you have the need to do that. One I use with people, including kids, if they ask to fuss Colby, sometimes I'll say, well, shall we let him decide? If he comes to you, then he's happy to be fussed. But if he stays at a distance, it means he's feeling a little bit shy right now and he doesn't want to say hi at the moment. And I've never had a problem with that. That's worked fine. Kids get the idea. Or he's a bit nervous of new people, so he needs a bit of space at the moment. Or we're in training is another good one to use. Colby's a lot less sociable when he has a pain flare-up with his luxating patella. So sometimes I'll also explain he's having a pain flare-up right now, so he's not really comfortable being touched. And people don't argue with that so much. Try to come up with a few phrases that feel natural to you and that have the least friction for you. If you rehearse your responses at home, it will come to you a lot more naturally when you have to bring them out in real life, and it will give you that little bit extra bravery and stop you getting so tongue-tied or hesitant when you encounter difficult situations. So don't just say it in your head, say it out loud. Do it in front of a mirror if you have to, but actually don't just think it, you need to do it. Practice, practice, practice. And I promise you, it does get easier and you are doing the best thing for your dog and society in general. So final thoughts. Good dogs and correct dog parenting are not universals. They are very much individual, as long as everyone's being kept safe and comfortable. You don't owe the world a nice dog. You owe your dog a livable life. You owe yourself the benefit of the doubt that you know your dog better than anyone else and you can act in the best interests of all. So what about you? Is there a should that you've stopped doing or a shouldn't that you've embraced? Can you think of a time when you've had to advocate for your dog and how did that go? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, give your dog a hug for me. And I still don't like hugs. Give him pats or something.